What's up, you guys? Welcome to episode 394 of the Established Run NBA podcast. I'm Mike Gallagher here with Drew Dinkmeyer. We are in August. We are in by far the lamest month of the year in the NBA calendar. So we're gonna be mean today. We did the top five free agency signings. We're gonna do the worst five free agency signings here. So should be fun. Excited to break it down. Dink, how's it going?
Yeah, don't want to begrudge anyone getting their money, right? But at the end of the day, when you're trying to win basketball games and you have limited resources to allocate towards building a team, we got to be critical of some of the decisions that teams have made out there. So we'll break down these bottom five free agent signings essentially of the offseason. And a lot of it will be, unfortunately, hating on people getting their bag, which I don't hate on the people getting their bag. You don't hate the player, you hate the game,
Oh no.
right? So I don't love the game that these teams are trying to play in terms of trying to compete with these spends.
Yeah, everyone on my list is going to get 30 million or more. So like, hey, you made $30 million. You did okay. So, um, so this was different. We had a lot of overlap in the best five. I feel like it was pretty clear cut who like most of them were. But this is kind of a tougher list to come up with. So we're going to count up from going from 5 to 1, and we have guys in different spots. So we'll kind of just knock it out in a way here. But go ahead first with your number five.
Number five for me. If you listened to episode 393 and the top five, you'll notice that I really care about age in the years that you're buying on players. And so number five for me is Klay Thompson. We're going to be buying age 34, 35, and 36 for Klay Thompson. I know shooting historically ages pretty gracefully, and Klay shot 38% from three last year once again. But man, this is a lot of change for Klay Thompson. 16 and $2/3 million a year, 3 years, $50 million contract with Dallas. Ultimately, from Dallas's perspective, like I understand that you want to surround Luka and Kyrie with 3-point shooting, and I understand Klay also. He's a guy that also makes big shots too, right? And has a history of playing and performing well at the playoff level as well. I just don't think you need to spend $16 million a year on catch and shoot 3-point shooting. Like, I think they kind of showed last year, whether it was Dante Exum, who was like a career low 30s shooter who shot 40%, you can find wide open catch and shoot 3-point shooting, and they're creating wide open catch and shoot shots for their guys. So for me, it was just in terms of like an allocation of resources and in terms of what they need. They have so much confidence, obviously, in their ability to generate good defense through their coaching and their scheme. But I would have rather allocated resources towards the defensive side of the ball, which Klay has dropped off kind of considerably the last few years since all these injuries. So for me, unfortunately, one of the Splash Brothers, one of the guys that I've loved rooting for over the last decade, comes in. I'm glad Klay got his bag. I don't love the move for the Dallas Mavericks.
I almost put it on there, but it's Klay. He's exceptional. Game 6 Klay, yada yada. But I'm a Klay hater now. Like I always, every time I'm like, oh, who's Klay gonna guard? He's gonna go off. Like that's how bad Klay Thompson's defense is. And to your point, like Luke Kennard just got paid 1 year, 11 million, and like Luke Kennard and Klay aren't that far off from catch and shoot aptitude. So he didn't make my list because he's Klay, but it was really close. It was probably like one of the two I just left off there. So I think that was, and just to come back around, like, do you think Dallas got better? Like a lot of people think Dallas got a lot better. I think they like they're the same. Like because losing,
Yeah,
I'm going to talk about Derrick Jones Jr. in a second, but like losing him and then adding Najee Marshall, and do you think they like got better this offseason? Sounds like no.
I don't. I think if they got better, it's through improvement from Luka, which look, how much more can a guy that good improve? But he's in the prime of his career. Improvement from Lively. I think those are areas that definitely they can continue to get growth. Maybe, and maybe this is the part that you could be optimistic on them improving, is if they diversified their offense a little bit more in terms of the way that they run the offense, because Klay can come off screens and shoot in a way that any of these standstills catch and shoot guys can't. Maybe I'm missing that. Maybe they're going to try to diversify the offense a little bit more in terms of not putting so much onus on Luka and Kyrie to carry usage during the regular season. Maybe they'll be able to be fresher during the playoffs. That's kind of the best case I can make. But ultimately, the one thing that we've been concerned about this roster from the start is point of attack defense. And I don't see it on the roster right now unless Najee Marshall, like we've talked about before, more of a big wing than a point of attack kind of defender. And so that's my concern for them is ultimately, are they still going to have trouble stopping the ball on the perimeter? And that's ultimately what, did them in the finals. I'm interested to see how they try to combat that. We saw them turn PJ Washington into a much better defender than we expected. Maybe they can continue to show growth in other areas, but losing Josh Green, losing Derrick Jones Jr., those are some of the guys that I think helped a lot in terms of point of attack defense. And I don't see who they have on the roster to do that this year.
Yeah, just kind of a big picture take from me. Like, think about all the good teams that like had quote unquote big moves or kind of didn't. Like, a lot of defense lost. Denver lost KCP. We talked about
Yep.
Dallas just now. Tyus Jones can't defend. DeMar DeRozan's on the Kings now. Like, so many of like the kind of good teams in the West like lost defense, which is kind of a pretty big trend to me. My number 5 is an ex Maverick, and it's Derrick Jones Jr. at 3 years, $30 million. I don't like it. Like, I talked about this a few pods ago. How many guys go with Luka and they just like lose everything? Like, Spencer Dinwiddie went away. Reggie Bullock, no one wants to sign him anymore. Dorian Finney-Smith like lost the value. Like, I feel like he got elevated by Luka so much that the Clippers kind of overpaid and they kind of panicked a little bit losing Paul George and signing him. So I hated this deal. I think Derrick Jones Jr. is a fine player, but that's too much money to pay him 3 years, $30 million. So I think that was a pretty bad move. Maybe I'll be wrong. I think this of all the guys I have here, this is obviously my number 5. So not something I feel too strongly about, but it was something I thought was just a little bit odd for a guy who was like hanging on to be in the league. How do you feel about the Derrick Jones Jr. signing?
This is my number 4. So, we can hit it together here, but ultimately the money doesn't bother me as much. Like 10 million a year is totally fine for Derrick Jones
Mm-hmm.
Jr. The years bother me a little bit. We're talking about
Mm-hmm.
years 20, 28, 29, 30, I believe, for Derrick Jones Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And then more so than anything is just comprehensively, what was this offseason? Like, if you're the Clippers and if you're really trying to compete, what was the negotiating with Paul George about? Like, do you really think you're going to replace Paul George's value through Derrick Jones Jr. and like, some scrap heap pickups? I don't understand comprehensively what they were accomplishing this offseason. So whether it's Derrick Jones Jr. or whether it's the James Harden, 2 years, $70 million, like all of it is bad to me because like, what was the point of any of this if you weren't bringing Paul George back? I just don't understand. And so maybe it's like, hey, we're not going to be a disaster 3 years from now. Okay, but what are you now? You're not even. I don't know if you're maybe a play-in team at this
Mm-hmm.
point. So like, I just don't understand what the Clippers offseason was. And unfortunately, I think Derrick Jones Jr. for me is like the poster boy of what represents just a very poor offseason on the whole.
Mm-hmm.
In the right situation, 3 years, $30 million for Derrick Jones Jr. If the Mavs had signed him back to that contract, I'd be like, that's totally fine. I just
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's the right situation to go and extend yourself on Derrick Jones Jr. when you opted to not negotiate in full faith with Paul George.
That's how I feel. Just the fit of this team. Like, I think James Harden won't elevate Derrick Jones Jr. the way that Luka Doncic will. So we talked about fit last time, where like Tyus Jones fits way better on the Suns, but this is kind of a more expensive kind of a, not wouldn't say like terrible fit, but just not a good fit for me. And compared to Chris Dunn, who's a little bit older, but I don't know. I think Chris Dunn for 3 for 17 is like somewhat good there. So my number 4 on my list is a little bit about just why aren't you tanking more? It's Miles Bridges, 3 for 75 million. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're a bad team. Like, don't pay this guy who, I'm not gonna talk about his off court stuff, but like, I think if the right team, like, if you told me the Clippers paid Miles Bridges 3 for 75, I'd be like, oh, okay, not bad. Because, like I said a few pods ago, he's missed like 11 games his whole career. He's going to give you production, but you don't want production. You want to tank this thing out. You want to get high picks for the next couple of years and rebuild this because you're clearly not winning as great as Brendan Miller looked in his rookie season. LaMelo can't stay healthy, but I don't know. It was just like, I don't like bad teams paying up and paying 3 years for a player who's not like, a clear like cornerstone of your franchise. I think you have him on your list as well. But what do you think about
Yeah,
this Miles Bridges deal?
number 2 on my list. So I really did not like it. And I think in the context of, I guess the way that I'd put it is, I don't agree with it, but I can understand how a team that is in a championship window might make an acquisition with the off the court track record of domestic violence, and also like no remorse. There's been no remorse from Miles Bridges in terms of
Mm-hmm.
the domestic violence charge. Um, Nothing that shows to me that the person is interested in being apologetic or adapting their behavior after that. And so I guess I understand that the money at the highest level is so big when you're like on the edges of like contending for a championship. When you're bad, I
Mm-hmm.
don't get it at all. Like
Yeah.
I don't get being the franchise that that is going to like make the face of your product like when LaMelo's down. Obviously LaMelo is technically the face, but like why even have any lack of clarity around that? Like LaMelo and Brandon Miller. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. Like that's what we should be advertising to our fans, and hey, we're building for the future. This Miles Bridges thing, it's like, what do you do? It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's kind of a slap in the face to the fan base where it's like, hey, we think you're dumb enough that if we have a guy who's scoring 20 points a night out here, that we can advertise to you to come see the games. Like, and for that to be the player that you're choosing to do that with the domestic violence charges, and I just not for me at all. So there's only one contract that I think was worse than this offseason. I think this is a disaster. Like he's a prototypical, you know, stat patter on a bad team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so what's the point? What's the point of tying your franchise to that? And their argument might be that, hey, like, oh, he's still in the prime of his career. We can build this thing. You're not going to build this thing fast. You're not close. So like, even if that was your argument in year 3 of this, are you really close to being like a title contender that year 3 matters? No. So
Mm-hmm.
like I just hated this deal. I thought on both from a PR standpoint, from an on-court standpoint, I just think it's stupid.
Yeah, it makes kind of no sense. I just hate like the rest of mine. The rest of mine are all like bad teams overpaying. Like that's usually the mo of a bad contract. The bad teams, hey, we got to fill cap, and there's something to that. But I hated it. I'm gonna go to number 3. I think he's on your list as well. I have Jonas Valanciunas for 3 years, 30 million. Like, what are we doing here? He's 32 years old. You've got all these centers you got to pay. They just picked up Alex Sarr, who's a 4-5 combo. Classic, like, floor raiser, ceiling killer play. I just don't get this. I would rather just, again, sit him. Who needs that? Play Rashawn Holmes, play Alex Sarr, play Marvin Bagley. Like, you're talking about tanking. That's a great tanking front court. So I don't know. I didn't really like this. I think Jovel's going to win him a few games that may hurt them in the long run. I still think they're probably the favorite to lose the most games. We'll see what the Nets do, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I just didn't like from the jump. I was like, why are you signing this guy when you've already got those guys? I think he's on your list as well.
Yes, he is number 3 as well for me. So we're matched here in terms of Joval. And this is in some of these instances, like Washington went out, they also signed Sadiq Bey, right? He's like injured, not going to play this season.
Mm-hmm.
But that Sadiq
Perfect.
Bey contract is very, very tradable as well, right? Like you can move that contract in season and pick up some assets for it, and all it costs you is like fronting the money for it. That's a lot harder to argue with centers. Centers are just really, really hard to go out and like trade middle of the season because most teams don't have like a glaring need. Now, maybe this changes with like where the Knicks and the Pelicans are at this point. Pelicans obviously losing Jonas Valanciunas. I don't think they're going to go back and trade for him, but maybe it opens up where there's some teams that like desperately need this, and the contract's not terrible in terms of 3 years, 10 million per year. 3 years isn't great for ages 32, 33, 34 on Joe Val. But then again, the context. And so for me, like if you're going to make these types of moves and you're going to sort of spend at market value on a free agent veteran player when you're a bad team, I at least want them to be tradable. The contract is close to tradable. I think it would be more tradable if it was 2 years. I think the third year is kind of a little bit of an issue there. But yeah, I'm not as I'm not as worried about like the tanking consequences of this. It's more for me. It's just like this 3-year commitment does nothing for you. And like if this was 2 years, I think you could trade this deal and you could maybe get something back for it, and then I understand it a little bit more. But I don't think anybody's trading for 3 years of Joe Val on the cap mid-season. So I'm not a fan.
Yeah, it just makes no sense with the way this roster is built out. So we've got a couple different pieces here. I'll go number 2 for me. which we disagree on. I got a bull again. You had the bull last time. I got a bull this time. It's not Jalen Smith though. It's Patrick Williams, 5 years, $90 million. I loved Paul, man. I was so high on him for a little bit, but like, what has he done to prove that he's worth 5 years, 90? Like, he's been hurt all the time. He can't create his own shot. He's I think better than people or worse than people think for defense. I don't know. It's just very uncomfortable for a player who like barely scores 10 a game to get that kind of money. And I don't know. I just didn't like it. So it's kind of straightforward. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he puts it together here. He's still pretty young. You're paying for his prime at 22 years old. So,
Yep.
but clearly just like how to get that much money? Like $90 million for compared to Tyus Jones for like $3 million for 1 year. It just bothers me.
Yeah. So I think in terms of the context of this move, current value, it's clearly an overpay. Patrick Williams is not worth $18 million a year at this point in his career. The years that you're buying, though, and this is why I don't mind this contract as much, is 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. That is like absolute peak prime of whatever Patrick Williams is. That's probably the prime of it. He shot the ball well from threes, 41% for his career from three. So he's proven to be like a fine spot up shooter. The defense has not been as good as people thought it was going to be. That was a big part of like the draft pick and the selection in the top 5 for Patrick Williams, was like, he's going to be a lockdown defender. He's had moments where he's been a very good defender, but on the whole, I think he's been kind of average, maybe slightly above average. And I think for him to earn this contract, he's going to need to get to good as a defender or get some creation on the offensive side of things. The good news is for the Bulls, what's the opportunity cost, right? Like, you're not contending right now, so it doesn't really matter. The only hopes that you have of like building out a contender in the next few years is if a player like Patrick Williams takes a big leap. And they're betting on guys like Josh Giddey, Patrick Williams, who are really young. Even though we think they have limited skill sets that don't allow them to take a leap, they're really young and they're buying the years where you think that maybe they could, right? And so it's betting on the come. I don't think it's good value for Patrick Williams, but I also think the opportunity cost is so low. Like, what else are they going to do and spend? Where would they spend the money that you'd be like, that's a smart move for the Bulls? There's nowhere. There's nothing that they're going to do. So why not spend it on 23 through 27 years of a guy who was a lotto pick who has shot 40% from three? Like, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, we're ripping all these players. We talked about Joe Val, Miles Bridges, number 1 on our list. We're going to talk about like these bad teams just can't pay up the money. So from that perspective, it's good. But like, I just that's sticker shock for me to see like $90 million on Patrick Williams, who like hasn't earned it yet. Maybe he will, but. Did we miss anyone for your 2 through 5?
No,
nope.
We hit the 2 through 5, so we are number 1 with a bullet.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I think this should be everybody's number 1, right?
Yeah.
I mean, especially from the city of Philadelphia. Everybody looked at this Tobias Harris 2 years, $52 million contract with Detroit and went, huh? What? What are we doing? A guy that like nobody would trade for at the deadline, didn't seem to have much of a market for himself, getting $26 million a year. And this has kind of been Detroit's thing the last few off seasons. And I know they have a new front office in place now, and a front office that's like more analytically inclined. And so I'm wanting to give them a little bit of leeway on this, but it's like, didn't we just do this with Jeremy Grant? I thought we just did this. And I think Jeremy Grant's probably a more effective player than Tobias Harris. And like, we did that and we traded it right away. So like, what are we doing? It creates a logjam for some of the talent that they need to figure out and develop. Like, how does this impact Asar Thompson's minutes? I think is a big question mark. So like, not only is the contract an issue, not like I don't understand any of it. Like, it creates a logjam on players that you want to develop. It's a big price to pay for a player that hasn't been super impactful to winning. It's his age 32 and 33 seasons. Like, I don't understand a single part of this deal for Detroit. And I think it's bad on all fronts. So this is the only thing that would surpass a PR nightmare signing of Miles Bridges for a tanking team, is this Tobias Harris contract that I don't understand in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, we get the salary floor stuff, but to your point, like, I think 2 players really exceeded expectations for the Pistons last year. Maybe not. Maybe Asar. I think Asar still exceeded, but yeah. Asar and Simone Fontecchio. Guess what position Tobias Harris plays? Those positions. So I don't know. Like, it's just like I get again, like we get the whole salary cap floor stuff, but it just makes like who was gonna pay him like 2 for 40? Like I don't know. Like
Yeah.
how did you like get that high of a number to pay him? And like why couldn't it be 1 year or something? So I
Yep.
don't know. Like and who knows? Maybe they put together this year. Who knows? I highly doubt it. But it's just again like talk about an easy one to put. Like when we put this list together, it's like okay, we're putting Tobias number one. We kind of all knew it. So, but yeah, like and Ron Holland, another 3-4 combo kind of player
Yep.
too. So like all their young talent is at this position, and Tobias, who I don't think so, like kind of going back to the Miles Bridges thing, like if a good team paid him this, I'd be oh okay, I get it. And I
Yeah.
get Tobias had a bad rap. I think Tobias is a pretty good player. We've seen him A play a ton of games, B shoot pretty well when he has to, able filling usage when he needs to. He's like a pretty good player, but like what is Detroit doing? I just don't get why they would pay him this much to like lock up those minutes that are just gonna be blocking guys. How many nights a year are we gonna be like, oh, Asar Thompson only played like 18 minutes because Tobias or somebody else had it going? Like that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, and I know a big part of their offseason has been focusing on trying to get pieces around Cade Cunningham to help his development. I just don't know how much Tobias Harris really helps his development. How much does he ease off the pressure of defenses from Cade Cunningham? He's not like he's fine at the 3-point line. He's 35, 36%, something like that. I guess 37% for his career. But like he's not going to take a bunch of pressure off of Cade from that perspective. Yes, he's a secondary scorer. So like how much does he help? I don't know. And you already got the Cade extension, so it's not like you needed
Mhm.
to bring people in to convince Cade to stay if Cade's the guy that you're choosing to kind of build around. So like I don't understand what Tobias brings. And again, in terms of like, can they trade this contract to a contender midseason?
No.
Tobias has that kind of profile that like would be possible, but $26 million is a lot. Like
Hmm.
how like matching salaries in this NBA era is like really tough to do that with. So yeah, I was really head scratcher for me on this Tobias Harris contract. And again, most of these ones for me are guys that are in their early to mid 30s getting paid and
Hmm.
multiple years. I don't love that unless you're really close to putting things kind of over the edge.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I don't know. It just makes kind of no sense to me. So, yeah, I think that anything else? Any honorable mentions here that you thought about hitting, or anything that was kind of close?
Yeah, we talked about the James Harden contract. James is worth 35 million a year, so it's not really the contract value. It's more like the whole off season. I thought
Mhm.
about that one a little bit, and then I would just mention like the Goga Batadze deal. It's not a lot of money, 3 years, $8.33 million a year, but like you just gave Jonathan Isaac a ton of money.
Mhm.
You have Mo Wagner, you have Wendell Carter Jr. Like is anybody going to trade for Goga Batadze? I don't think so. So just from like an asset management standpoint for Orlando, I think their offseason in general has been really good, and they have a bunch of these mid-tier contracts that you can kind of package up and trade. But that signing was just a little odd to me in terms of giving 3 years. We've talked a lot before about the center position being similar to like the running back position in the NFL, where like there's just more supply than there is demand. So naturally, you can find players in the buyout market, different things like that. And they got Batadze for like nothing a few years ago, and he's played fine. Like
Mhm.
he's been a capable fill in whenever he's needed to be. So it's not that I don't think he's worth that money. It's just it was a little odd for me, given that they had made sure that they had signed Jonathan Isaac, and Batadze's not in the rotation. Like he's a fringe rotation player. So why give a
Mhm.
3 year commitment to a fringe rotation player? I didn't understand that one.
Yeah, that was they're so loaded. This team's so deep, but yeah. And one other point for me, like just comparing it to the good contracts is insane to me. Like we're talking about 252 for Tobias. Like straight up, if money was an issue, would you rather have Tyus Jones or Tobias?
It's
Gary
pretty
Trent?
close.
Would you rather have Gary Trent or Tobias for
Yeah,
2.8? Like it's just insane.
yeah.
Like it makes it like talking about these contracts just makes those good contracts look so good. So this was fun. I would say sorry to the people we're bashing, but A, I'm sure you're not listening, and B, you guys all just got paid $30 million or more. So shout out to you guys. But anything else you want to mention before we jam out of here?
As always, appreciate everybody supporting the podcast and our content. If you'd care to leave a rating or a review on the podcast platform that you're listening to, that would be great. And if you'd be interested in subscribing to our YouTube channel and checking out the content we put over there, Established Run NBA, that would be awesome as well. As we alluded to last podcast, Mike, myself, Sam, our projections team are in the lab working on the season-long projections, grinding through them in hopes of getting some best ball rankings out for those interested in attacking the underdog double dribble in the next few weeks, and just setting the stage for us to be in really good shape for all the stuff that goes into the draft kit that Mike will be working on over the course of the next few months. So we're really excited about all the work that we're putting in behind the scenes. We're excited to reveal it to you in a few weeks here. So stay tuned for more information on our season-long package and best ball package offerings that we're going to be having this offseason.
Yeah, I'm pretty much doing three things. Working with you in the spreadsheets, which is new to me, doing player baselines. I'm hiking, walking a lot, and I'm doing best ball drafts. So shout out to the NFL team. Hall of Fame came tonight, NFL preseason. So look at the Established Run NFL guys. Just do such good work. I love Levitan's pods every single time. I wish they were longer almost. He's so good. So shout out to them. Shout out to everyone for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.